Howard. We now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingrassia, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Rice, Alderman Gunther, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Ornowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Roddy, Alderman Todd, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Narayan, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Navarro, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Oldenburg, Alderman Roddy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd. 19 present.
Quorum being present, we will be led today in prayer by John Watson, Jr. of Maple Temple.
We're going to quote from the Holy Scriptures. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Gracious God, Heavenly Father, we come in prayer, lifting our minds and our hearts into your presence as we begin today. Assure us that you are with us and that we have a real place in your heart and in your endeavor to bring righteousness and peace and goodwill to our community. We know that we're all too imperfect and that we have offended you. Yet, we believe that you're with us, loving us with a love that never let us go and never let us down. In your love we live, in your love we learn, and through your love we find light for our day. May we be our loving best as we face the task of this day. Amen.
Also like to ask everyone to please join me in a welcome for Pastor LaShawn Tarkington of St. Peter AME Church. He's the new pastor. Let's give him a round of applause and thank him for joining us today. And it's my understanding that he's going to come back at a later date to do the opening prayer for us. We're looking forward to it, and thank you, and we wish you all the luck in the world here in St. Louis, and hopefully you make St. Louis your home for an extended period of time till you're old and gray. All right, thanks, Pastor. With that introduction of honored guests, any introduction of honored guests? Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest Fred Searcy from the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, and also Jeff Hines with the Carpenters Union, and Dave Sweeney, our farmer clerk, who's currently with Lewis and Rice.
All right, let's welcome. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 10th like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We're gathered here on February 14th. We all know what day that is. It's Ferris Wheel Day. Yeah, well, actually, it is. It was on this day in 1980 that Walter Cronkite retired, and in 1967, Aretha Franklin recorded Respect. But in 1974, the alderman from the 23rd's life was changed when the captain and Tennille got married on Valentine's Day. Let's go.
All right. Approval of the minutes.
Approved of the minutes, February the 7th, 2020.
Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the motion for approval of the minutes.
I move for approval of minutes of February 7th, 2020.
Moved by the Alderman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 27th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the aldermen's mailboxes.
We dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? We will dispense with line items 8 through 10. First reading of board bills.
Board Bill 217, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and comptroller of the city of St. Louis to execute upon receipt of and in consideration of the sum of $250 and other good and valuable consideration, a quitclaim deed to Remise released and forever quitclaim unto Julia D. Lopez and Veronica A. Knoll, certain city-owned property located at City Block 5114, which is property known and numbered as 4219 Gibson Avenue in the city of St. Louis, Missouri. Board Bill 218, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and comptroller of the city of St. Louis to execute upon a receipt of and in consideration of the sum of $1,250 and other good and valuable consideration, a quitclaim deed to Remise release and forever quitclaim unto the Transgender Memorial LLC, certain city-owned property located in City Block 3984, which is property known and numbered as 1485 through 87 South Vandeventer Avenue in the city of St. Louis, Missouri. Board Bill 219, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Ingrassia, Alderman Gunther, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Rice, and Alderman Narayan. An ordinance entitled Building Energy Performance Standards. The purpose of this ordinance is to establish energy performance standards for certain buildings in the city of St. Louis. Board Bill 220, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate above surface, surface, and subsurface rights for vehicle, equestrian, and pedestrian travel in a 15-foot wide north-south alley in City Block 3874 West, as bounded by Waterman, Clara, Pershing, and DeBaliviere in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, as hereinafter described in accordance with Charter Authority and in conformity with Section 1.4 of Article 21 of the Charter and imposing certain conditions on such vacation. Board Bill 221, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia and Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance revising certain sections of the city's zoning code in order allow short-term rental as term is defined in this ordinance in the zoning district and in accordance with the requirements of this ordinance. Board Bill 222, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia and Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance to promote short-term rentals in the city of St. Louis, preserve residential communities, and provide equal opportunity for traditional short-term lodging providers by authorizing the building commissioner along with the advisement of a short-term rental task force and consistent with the revised code of City of St. Louis and other applicable law to facilitate the regulation of short-term rentals as defined herein and containing an effective date. Board Bill 223, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, President Reed, Alderwoman Navarro, Alderwoman Rice, and Alderwoman Martin, an ordinance establishing a paid parental and care leave program for the city of St. Louis full-time exempt employees. This program will establish two benefits, paid parental leave and paid caregiver leave. These benefits will complement current leave options such as vacation and sick leave, including an effective date. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
Just a second. To the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 217 and 218. To the Parks Committee, Board Bill 219. To Streets, Board Bill 220. To HUDs, Board Bill 221. To Public Safety, Board Bill 222. To Health and Human Services, Board Bill 223. That is extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following board bills were reported out of HUD's with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 173, committee sub, sponsored by Alderwoman Boyd, an ordinance providing a blighting study and redevelopment plan for Goodfellow Boulevard, West Florissant Avenue, scattered sites redevelopment area. Board Bill 177, committee sub, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance approving a blighting study and redevelopment plan for 5311 through 6123 and 5302 through 6122 Dr. Martin Luther King Drive redevelopment area. Board Bill 182, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia and Alderman Coulter, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated November 19, 2019 for the La Session scattered sites area. Board Bill 183, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated November 19, 2019 for the 4500 block through 4540 Swan Avenue and 1305 through 1305 rear South Taylor Avenue area. Board Bill 185, sponsored by Alderman Coulter, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated November 19, 2019 for the 618 through 624 and 700 through 702 North 2nd Street area. Board Bill 215, sponsored by President Reed and Alderwoman Ingrassia and Alderman Coulter, an ordinance approving a soccer stadium redevelopment plan, making certain findings related thereto, including that the redevelopment area described therein is a blighted area, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute certain documents related thereto, including a master redevelopment agreement, authorizing and directing the taking of other actions and approval and execution of other documents as are necessary or desirable to carry out and comply with the intent hereof. Board Bill 216, sponsored by President Reed, Alderwoman Ingrassia, and Alderman Coulter, an ordinance approving a soccer stadium redevelopment plan in accordance with Section 99.300 to 99.715 of the revised statutes of Missouri, making certain findings relating thereto, including that the redevelopment area described therein is in a blighted area and pledging the cooperation of the Board of Aldermen. The following board bill was reported out of Ways and Means with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 207, sponsored by Alderman Coulter, an ordinance authorizing the St. Louis City Board of Election Commissioners, upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, to expend any funds received by SLEBC from 2019-2020 election efficiency grant award by the Missouri Secretary of State to provide assistance to local election authorities to improve election processes within state funds, to assist with election activities, systems, equipment, maintenance, voting equipment purchases, maintaining voter lists, and polling places accessibility, to fulfill the obligations of said grant, limited to expenditures covered entirely by grant funds and containing an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of Transportation and Commerce with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 188, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Comptroller, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making certain findings with respect to transfer up to $13,726,769 of excess monies that the City of St. Louis, the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, to be used to make funds available to mitigate rates on an annual basis during the term of the airport use and lease agreement commencing July 1st, 2016, containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of second reading.
We will dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 195, sponsored by Alderwoman Tyus, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to permanently close, barricade, or otherwise impede the flow of traffic in north-southbound, approximately 240 linear feet alley located between Palm Street and Lexington Avenue and City Block 4456, approximately 95 linear feet east of Kings Highway, Memorial Boulevard, east curb line, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 199, sponsored by Alderman Ornowitz, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Rice, Alderwoman Green, and Alderwoman Navarro. An ordinance pertaining to the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, PK 104 through 91, as amended, amending Ordinance 68109, by repealing paragraph A of section 3 and enacting a new paragraph thereof, specifically by redesignating the city's hybrid entity healthcare components to add the Department of Health of the City of St. Louis as such.
Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move that we adopt the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 10th, entertain a second. Second by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 200, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard and Alderwoman Murphy. An ordinance to regulate employer and employee working relationships between the City of St. Louis and all employees under the classified service, including the compensation plan, terms and conditions of employment, benefits, leaves of absence, authorization for a deferred compensation plan, repealing Ordinance 70791, allocating certain other employees to a grade with rate and including an emergency clause. The provisions of the sections contained in this ordinance shall be effective with the start of the first pay period following approval by the mayor.
Alderwoman from the 14th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 200.
Yes, I would like the board to approve and perfect Board Bill 200.
Been moved by the Alderwoman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th and the Alderwoman from the 13th. Please proceed, Alderwoman.
Simply stated, this bill will allow all civil service employees employed by the City of St. Louis to receive a 3% raise. This year, everyone employed on March 29th will receive a $1,000 bonus check. It will not affect their step at this point. And then going forward, each employee under the civil service rules will get a 3% this year and next year. This is very, very much needed because we're having a hard time retaining and keeping competent employees. Our pay schedule has not, most people have not seen a raise since 2003 of any, they haven't had a meaningful raise since 2003. People have gotten step increases of 1.5%. This does not keep up with the rate of inflation, which over the past 10 years has averaged about 2% every year. So what we're giving them is not, you know, a gold-plated big deal, but it's at least more than what they were getting, and hopefully, you know, as we move forward, we can reconsider. The reason we can afford to do this is the city has done well on their upping employment. We are collecting more earnings tax. We've had, you know, the blues. We've had several things to fuel our economy here in the city, and I think it's time that we reward our employees that have served us well through the hard times and the good and the bad times with a pay increment that reflects some of their efforts. We call on them for all kinds of things, and I think that they are well deserving this increase.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 18th.
Yeah, I do think the employees deserve a raise. At the same time, I think some of that money should go to the communities for services that we are lacking. In my ward, we have buildings that could be saved that need to be boarded up from the first floor to all the way up, and then those buildings could be saved. Also, we have forestry work, trees, weeds that have all grown into trees. We also have sidewalks that need fixing, and many other infrastructures in our ward. So I think the employees, I think some of that money that we've accumulated should be shared with the community. If we have extra money, we should put some, we've spent $15 million a year on vacant lots, cutting vacant lots for the city. We spent $15 million cutting vacant lots for LRA. We should build houses on those lots, and then we would even generate more money. We would create jobs for people who don't have work. It is time that we spend more money on people on the homeless, on people in poverty, on people who have absolutely nothing, those who are hungry, those who are ill-clothed, those who don't have medical care. We're going to have to redirect our funds that we have and make sure that we both take care of our community, take care of our workers, but we need to take care of those who are in the most desperate need and take care of the communities that are in the most desperate need so that we won't have these food deserts and have people in poverty who can't, some of them, the only way they are able to survive is to steal in order to get food, steal in order to get clothes, sleep in vacant buildings during the winter, and things on bus stops that I've seen, even people sleeping on bus stops. These are the type of things we need to use this money for. So our number one priority with this money should be making sure that it especially goes to North St. Louis, because we've been neglected during my lifetime more than 50 years. And we need to make up through reparation, paying for the neglect of Team 4, which was designated to cut us off who pay taxes north of Delmar and not give us the services. We need to use some of that money to repay that side of the city for the harm that has been done to it. So part of that money should go to those who have been neglected, those communities that have been neglected, and then if we have anything left, it should go for raises. But okay,
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderwoman from the 14th would yield.
Alderwoman from the 14th, will you yield the question to the Alderwoman from the 1st?
Yes, I will.
Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
Alderwoman, first of all, I want to thank you for carrying this bill. I carried it last year. It's a hard thing to carry. It's a lot of pages to go through.
It's a lot of pages.
I had to have hours and hours of meeting. So in this bill, are the police going to get another raise besides the $6,000 that they got last year?
Not at this time.
Okay, because that was one of my problems I had. I carried the bill, but that made me feel really bad that we were giving the police $6,000, and all our employees are important. So the major changes in this bill is that we're going to have the bonus in there. Right.
The bonus will be for every employee employed on March 29th of this year, if the mayor follows through and signs this into law as soon as we can.
She has to, since she's
Okay,
already.
I think so. So every employee that is employed by the city of St. Louis on March 29th will receive the $1,000, and that kind of reflects, it's not quite a 3% increase for this past fiscal year, but it gives them an incentive. And averaging, when you look at the $1,000 or the 3%, if you look at the average salary, it comes out to about that much for the average employee, that they'll probably gain about $1,000 in next year's pay.
And then we also are going to go back and adjust, because by giving these bonuses and raises, there are going to be some unusual circumstance and going to 15 for some people who now going to work under people who are going to make more than the people they work for. Is that not correct?
That's also been contained in the bill as far as step adjustments, and they've actually taken some steps up out of the order, because they're no longer effective. In other words, we've got some people that were making less than $15 an hour that we've employed, which is a sad state of affairs if we're promoting $15 an hour minimum wage.
And so I actually read most of the bill. So, like, I know ever since Nick Young left, we've not had a refuse commissioner. And I know why, because they leave openings, so when the mayor leaves, people who work in her cabinet then bump themselves right back down to positions, Todd Waterman. But that's not legal, so I've already looked that up, Todd Waterman. And so when we're putting this amount, we're not the budget, but we keep putting this refuse commissioner in the budget, and I saw that again. But we're not actually ever filling this position. Is there anything that you think we can do that we could, with this bill, and maybe it's ways and means that we can stop this kind of thing where we don't, because we keep saying that we cannot find people to fill it, but I know for a fact that in the trash department there are people who want to be the refuse commissioner right now, and we don't have one. And that's one of the biggest problems we have with trash pickup right now. So is there anything that was addressing that in this bill? And it's probably not.
There is nothing in this bill. However, we have many positions that have remained unfilled, and maybe there could be another bill that could be that if positions remain unfilled for X amount of time, that maybe they need to be taken off. I sometimes have a problem, and that's where some of this money is coming from, because we have not had so many positions filled that we're able to afford to give those people that have worked so hard with less help a raise. I don't think that this probably compensates them as much as they probably should be compensated, but it's the best we can do at this time to stay within our budget and not break the bank.
I know when I was the chair that I had Richard do a citywide study of all
And
the people
that's-
that, right.
that's
Is that
still-
contained in it? That's coming. That has
That's
an out-
coming. The results haven't
Right.
finished, and I assume that once we get those, maybe if we still have a overage in the budget, maybe we can bring a little bit more forward so for our employees, because let's face it, our employees have went since 2010. Many of them were furloughed, many of them have taken pay cuts because of the furloughs, and the compensation I know people that have left because they went into private industry because they just couldn't afford to work for us anymore.
I'm going to say this, so this is interesting. So the first time I got elected was right after we used to only pay, anybody can make $25,000 a year. That was the mayor, and that was the lid. And a few years before I came here, we changed that. And we seem to have still kept people who didn't make a lot of money. We have kept good people. So all of a sudden, it's like we cannot keep people. They make not a lot more, but substantially more than when everybody was making $25,000. So I really think that we need to stop that spiel about we can't get people and start looking at what it is that really is preventing them from staying here. Because I think there's another problem, okay? And I mentioned one of them with the forestry workers. We have permanent seasonal workers that come back every year. So it makes no sense that before we look for anybody else that we wouldn't offer those seasonal workers full-time jobs. Our charter requires that. And in fact, I had several of them that I had sent to apply for the full-time jobs. They wouldn't hire them, but they hired them for the part-time and the seasonal work, and then told them at the end of the year they would get back to them. And they have not been authorized to hire people. So I think there's something else going on that's political, and they're making it look like that we can't find people. But if you have a job fair, if we had a job fair at City Hall and brought the people down here, we would have people wrapped around the corner looking for jobs. So I think we have a serious problem, not just with pay, but actually in being inclusive, inviting all people in. And the other thing I want to just say is that if we're having trouble with some things, that we have a training place called Slate. We have other things that we could train. If we need drivers to drive our trash trucks, how about we start a class that we teach people how to do this? There are some other innovative ways that we ought to be able to do to have people to come in. And so I really do think this is a political stunt that's being done in some instances, not in all of them, but in some instances, I don't really believe that we can't hire people. But it's much easier to go out there and say, this is how we need to get rid of the residency, or this is what we need to do, because we're not doing what we ought to do to get good people in. And I don't believe it's just the pay, because for years they made 20, including the mayor, could make only $25,000. And now the mayor makes substantially more, and there are people in her cabinet, which I have a problem with that make way more than the mayor. So I think that we've gone too far in some instances of what we pay people, and we have not paid other people what they should get paid. So I appreciate you carrying this. Is there anything else that is a major change that's in this bill from before that you can think of?
Like I said, the steps, there's been steps taken out, and that's about all I can think of. Let's see here. The $1,000, and that's all. That hopefully we can, fill some vacancies if we're starting people at a better rate. We also have to understand the environment we're in right now. The jobless rate is way down, and I hate to say, if you don't have a job in this environment, it's probably because you don't really want one, or you just aren't reaching out.
A young man, because go ahead.
And I really think that, part of the problem with recruitment is salary level. People can, get their experience here. And let's face it, the younger people do not take a job that they expect to retire from. Many people, the younger people, they're always looking to move on, to better themselves, not by staying with a company and following the pay increases. They look for things that are going to expand their horizons where they can learn more. It's a different working environment than when I started back a few years ago.
Hear what you're saying. I want to say I'm going to bring a young man that I sent to forestry that they would not hire full-time, but they hired part-time, and he got all great ratings, and he's been calling since that time to try to get a full-time position. And I even called over, because I never do this, to say, well, and they told me, oh, we're just going to hire part-time first. Why? Why would you hire part-time first? So, and then this person did what was asked. So I think the reason why a lot of times people leave is because they don't have good work environments, okay? And we can do the comparison of Costco and Sam's. And those workers do the same things. And the difference between a Costco and Sam's is Costco pays their workers, they have benefits, they have education, they do that, and Sam's does not. And so they stay for long, long periods of time at Costco, and I'm using brand names, but it's just a stark difference. So I think that the city and organizations, if you want to keep young people and you want them to grow with you and you don't want to lose your people, then you have to grow with and do things that will help grow them. I don't have a problem that people want to enrich themselves and they want to make the most money. We want them to do a good job, so I absolutely do not have a problem with that. I, again, do not think that we are doing everything we can to hire people. That's my personal experience since I've been here. And I don't send a lot of people. This person called me, and I knew he did a great job, and it just doesn't make any sense that they still haven't hired any permanent forestry workers, but we put these contracts out. The only reason that makes sense is because somebody got some friends that want to do contracts. And that's the same thing that's coming along all of a sudden with these speed humps, $900 studies all of a sudden that we want to do contracts. So I've been here long enough to know that there's been a push all these years for privatization, and what you have to do is undercut the efficiency of what government is supposed to be, and people use that to compare government with business. We're not the same thing at all. Government is a service-oriented thing. Businesses try to pay the stockholders money. So we're supposed to serve our constituents. So I do not believe that we don't have people that don't want to work. I think that we have people here in this city hall that are not hiring people that don't want to work. I appreciate all your work. I did read it. I didn't find any major differences. I am going to support this, but I am going to push for us to look how many positions are not filled, and that when we get to go on to Ways and Means, we take this money out and use it for someplace else. Don't just use placeholders and then at the end of the year say, look at this $30 million I suddenly found. You didn't find it. You already funded all these different positions that actually don't have anybody, and then you tell the story, we can't hire them. Yes, we can. And if you can't do it, what I always tell people, if you're not doing your job, then fire that person and find somebody who can do it. Because I do not believe people don't want to work. For many years, that has been the theory out in the African-American community. The lazy black man doesn't want to work. Every time we've ever had a job fair or anything like that, black, white, orange, green people line up and they want to work. So we need to really stop putting that out about our constituents, because I believe most people want to work. Thank you so much. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 18th.
I would like to reemphasize that if we need to train people, we have SLATE, and we need to utilize SLATE to train people. Many jobs that the city has can be on-the-job training, so we don't have, all we have to do is teach them. The majority of the jobs are not so technical that people can't learn them by doing the job. And there are plenty of people, especially from North St. Louis, that do want to work. There are people getting out of jail that shouldn't have been in jail in the first place who want to work. They don't want to go back to jail. They can be trained. They made a mistake. They shouldn't have gone in the first place called the mass incarceration, but they want to be trained. Maybe they learned their lesson after they made a mistake. Whatever the issue is, we have plenty of people north and south of Delmar, and in the central, west, and all over the city. We need to advertise those jobs. We need to, when I say lower the standard, I don't mean one person can pass a test, that means that you got high standards. Because a good example is the police. They pass a lot of tests, but then we have police officers who can't even go to the warrant office, and we have others, I heard, and I don't have documentation that are under indictment, so they passed the test, but they did not, they're not able to function on the job. What we need to do is go to Slate, which we have set up, train people. Those who don't need talk with the supervisors and tell them to train people on the job. Because forestry, the street department, the parks department, those jobs, people who are interested in them can do them. So being motivated is the most important factor in doing anything. And we have people, especially African Americans, who are desperate for jobs, who would love some of these jobs, but we have to give them an opportunity, and we have to make the job fit the person who can do the job, rather than setting some standards that are unrealistic and not related to the job. And we cannot say African Americans are lazy. That's why they brought us over here. Most of us wouldn't be here if we were lazy. Why would you bring some lazy people over and work them for 250 years and then don't pay them anything, and then work them for another more than 100 years, and then take the labor for free? So we're used to working for nothing and under bad conditions and taking the leftovers. So we do work. Our history show it, and what we need to do at City Hall is to hire people for the job and give them an opportunity to make a living and take care of their families. And African American, like anyone else, want to be able to take care of families, and the reason the families are broken up is because of lack of resources. And if we have jobs, I want to see them so that we can, and I will help match the people to the job. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 14th, you recognize to close.
I would just like to say that, part of this pay increase will help all the people that are currently employed to raise their standard of living, and those people that will be recruited in the future, to give them a gateway to a better life. So with that said, I'd like to put this before and
renew your motion.
And make a motion that we pass this out.
Just renew your motion.
Pardon me?
Just renew.
I'd like to renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th, and the Alderwoman from the 13th, that we perfect Board Bill number 200. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That is 16 of Board Bills for perfection.
We'll dispense with line items 17 through 19. Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the motion for the courtesy resolutions calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt the courtesy resolutions calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 10th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll dispense with line item 21, second reading of resolutions.
We have none.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Monday, February the 17th, the office will be closed in honor of President's Day. Tuesday, February the 18th, Neighborhood Development will have a meeting, 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Wednesday, February the 19th, Rules Committee will meet at 10 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Thursday, February the 20th, Ways and Means will have a meeting, 10 a.m. in the Leisure Room, and Personnel will meet 11 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Friday, February the 21st, Full Board meeting, 10 a.m. in the Chambers. That is the extent of the announcement.
I just also want to wish everyone a very happy Valentine's Day. Have a happy and safe Valentine's Day tonight. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we excuse the following aldermen, the alderman from the 2nd, the 4th, 16th, 19th, 20th, 21st, the 22nd, we're not sure about, but we'll let them go today, for necessary absence.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 10th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 7th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move we adjourn the meeting to a day to be determined later. Thank you.
Now we have to.
I tried to sneak it in.
We-
All right. Move that we adjourn until February 21st, 2020. Thank you.
All right, been moved by the Alderman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 7th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Stand adjourned.